In the rolling countryside of Hawthorne Valley, where wealth and poverty existed in stark contrast, lived Orion Blackwell, a millionaire whose fortune came from suspicious real estate deals and questionable business practices. His mansion stood atop the highest hill overlooking the modest farms that dotted the landscape below. Among these farms was one owned by the hard-working Eldon Mercer, whose prized possession was a magnificent black stallion named Thunderbolt. Orion had always been envious of Eldon's reputation in the community. Despite having minimal wealth, Eldon was respected and loved by all who knew him. His integrity was unwavering, and his generosity knew no bounds. Orion, on the other hand, was feared rather than respected, and this gnawed at his ego daily. For months, Orion had been embezzling funds from local charity organizations, many of which had been established to help struggling farmers. As the financial discrepancies began to surface and whispers of an investigation circulated, Orion knew he needed a scapegoat. His plan was as audacious as it was absurd. He would frame Eldon's horse, Thunderbolt. A horse can't defend itself. In court, Orion mused to himself while pacing in his opulent study. And that fool Eldon is so attached to the beast that framing it would destroy him emotionally and financially. The plan involved planting evidence linking Thunderbolt to a series of destructive nighttime raids on neighboring properties, where valuable items were stolen and buildings damaged. Orion meticulously collected horseshoe prints matching Thunderbolt's unique stride pattern, gathered black horsehairs from fences where the stallion often grazed, and even commissioned replica horseshoes from a blacksmith 2 counties away. Magistrate Linnea Frost, the county's stern but fair-minded judge, had already received anonymous tips about peculiar activities involving a black horse. Sheriff Desmond Pike, a childhood friend of Orion's who owed his position to the millionaire's influence, was preparing to issue a warrant to inspect Eldon's farm. Meanwhile, Eldon remained oblivious to the scheme unfolding against him and his beloved Thunderbolt. The aging farmer spent his days tending to his modest crops and caring for his animals, unaware that his reputation was about to be challenged by the most powerful man in the valley. Orion's personal assistant, Verity Quinn, had begun to suspect her employer's nefarious activities. A woman of principle who had taken the job out of financial necessity, she found herself increasingly uncomfortable with the late-night meetings and mysterious packages arriving at the mansion. When she accidentally discovered files detailing plans to frame the farmer's horse, her moral compass pointed clearly to what she must do. As autumn leaves began to fall across Hawthorne Valley, the trap was nearly set. Orion had arranged for the final stage, a midnight raid on the town's treasury, with evidence pointing directly to Thunderbolt. False witnesses had been paid, fake evidence had been planted, and the town was abuzz with rumors about strange happenings attributed to an animal with almost human intelligence and malice. Little did Orion know that his elaborate plan had a fundamental flaw. Thunderbolt was more than just a horse to Eldon. The animal had saved his life during a terrible storm years ago. Their bond was unbreakable, and the entire community had witnessed their mutual loyalty time and again. And as the first accusations began to circulate, unexpected allies were already rallying to the defense of man and beast alike, setting the stage for a confrontation that would shake Hawthorne Valley to its core. The market square of Hawthorne Valley buzzed with tension on a crisp Saturday morning. Sheriff Pike stood on the wooden platform, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd as he read out the charges against Eldon Mercer's horse. By order of the county court, Thunderbolt, the black stallion belonging to Eldon Mercer, is to be seized and held pending investigation into multiple counts of property destruction, theft, and public endangerment. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eldon, who had arrived late after finishing his morning chores, pushed his way forward, his weathered face pale with shock. "This is madness!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "Thunderbolt has never left my property unattended. He couldn't possibly have done these things." From his position at the edge of the crowd, Orion Blackwell suppressed a smile. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The evidence against the horse was substantial. Horseshoe prints at each crime scene matching Thunderbolt's unique pattern, black horse hairs found among broken glass and splintered wood, and eyewitness accounts of a dark equine figure fleeing into the night. Magistrate Frost adjusted her spectacles and addressed Eldon directly. "Mr. Mercer, the evidence is concerning. Until this matter is resolved, your horse will be held in the county stables." As two deputies approached Eldon's farm to seize Thunderbolt, a small figure emerged from the crowd, 12-year-old Wren Holloway, daughter of the local schoolteacher. Her voice was small but determined as she addressed the magistrate. "Ma'am, Thunderbolt couldn't have done anything wrong on Tuesday night because he was with me and my father. Our wagon broke down returning from my grandmother's, and Mr. Mercer and Thunderbolt helped us home." Magistrate Frost's eyebrow arched with interest. "That directly contradicts the timeline of one of the incidents. Sheriff Pike, was this alibi investigated?" Pike shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. "We have multiple witnesses placing the horse at the scene, Magistrate." The crowd began to murmur. Bryony Holloway, the schoolteacher, stepped forward to confirm her daughter's account. "It's true. Eldon and Thunderbolt stayed with us until past midnight. They couldn't possibly have been anywhere else." Orion felt a flicker of concern. This unexpected testimony threatened his carefully constructed narrative. He quickly dispatched his right-hand man, Rowan Walsh, to speak with his paid witnesses and ensure their stories remained consistent. Meanwhile, Verity Quinn had been gathering courage. After discovering Orion's scheme, she had begun collecting evidence of his true crimes. Now, watching an innocent man potentially lose everything, she made her decision. Slipping away from the crowd, she headed toward the newspaper office of the Hawthorne Herald, where journalist Indigo Marsh had been investigating financial discrepancies in local charity organizations. As the debate in the square continued, Eldon stood firm in defense of his faithful companion. "Thunderbolt has been with me for 15 years, he declared. "He's gentler than most people I know. This is a mistake, or—" His eyes landed on Orion's smug face in the crowd, and suddenly connections began forming in his mind. 3 years earlier, Eldon had refused to sell his land to Orion when the Millionaire was expanding his estate. Was this elaborate scheme some form of delayed revenge? By afternoon, the town had divided into factions. Some believed the evidence against Thunderbolt was irrefutable, while others found the entire premise absurd. How could a horse, however intelligent, execute complex break-ins and thefts? Where was the stolen property? And why would an animal with no use for money or valuables commit such crimes? As Thunderbolt was led away to the county stables, Eldon watched with tears streaming down his face. "I'll clear your name, old friend," he whispered. "I promise." Unknown to both Eldon and Orion, 3 separate investigations were now underway. Sheriff Pike's official inquiry into the crimes attributed to Thunderbolt, Indigo Marsh's journalistic investigation into the missing charity funds, and most dangerous to Orion's scheme, Verity Quinn's personal mission to expose her employer's corruption before an innocent man and his beloved horse paid the price for crimes they never committed. Verity Quinn stood in the shadowy corner of Indigo Marsh's cluttered office at the Hawthorne Herald, her hands trembling as she handed over a leather portfolio containing ledgers, correspondence, and photographic evidence of Orion Blackwell's financial crimes. "He's been siphoning funds from the Agricultural Relief Fund, the Children's Hospital Campaign, and at least 3 other charities," Verity explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "The total exceeds $500,000. Indigo's eyes widened as she flipped through the documents. A veteran journalist who had covered corruption in cities far larger than Hawthorne Valley, she recognized authentic evidence when she saw it. "And the business with Eldon's horse?" she asked, pen poised above her notebook. "A diversion," Verity confirmed. "Mr. Blackwell created an elaborate scheme to direct attention away from himself. He's orchestrated everything. The false witnesses, fabricated evidence, even having horseshoes made to match Thunderbolt's print pattern. While this conversation unfolded, Eldon wasn't sitting idle. Having worked the land for 6 decades, he possessed a farmer's tenacity. With Thunderbolt imprisoned in the county stables, Eldon began his own investigation, starting with the crime scenes. At the widow Hemlock's ransacked cottage, Eldon noticed something peculiar about the horseshoe prints. Having shod his own horses for decades, he recognized that the prints showed no variation in depth or angle, impossibly perfect impressions that would never occur with a real horse. At Merchant Finian Grove's store, where expensive items had been stolen, Eldon discovered fragments of black horsehair suspiciously placed on a broken window frame, as if deliberately left behind. Across town, young Wren Holloway hadn't forgotten Thunderbolt's plight. The perceptive child began asking questions around town, particularly about strangers seen in Hawthorne Valley on the nights of the incidents. Her innocent inquiries yielded unexpected information. 3 unfamiliar men had been staying at the slumbering Fox Inn during the period of the crimes, men who left early each morning and returned late at night. Sheriff Pike faced mounting pressure from multiple directions. Magistrate Frost, skeptical from the beginning about the premise of a criminal horse, demanded more substantial evidence. The town was divided, with many refusing to believe that Eldon's gentle stallion could be responsible for sophisticated criminal activity. Pike's discomfort increased when he received a sealed message from Orion demanding immediate action. Conclude the investigation. Find the horse guilty. Handle it today. The sheriff stared at the note, then at the badge pinned to his chest. He had compromised his principles for years to maintain Orion's favor, but framing an innocent animal and destroying a good man's reputation crossed a line he hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, Orion grew increasingly agitated. His financial manipulations were becoming harder to conceal, and rumors about an impending audit of the charity accounts had reached his ears. He summoned Rowan Walsh to his study. "We need to accelerate our timeline," Orion instructed, pouring himself a generous brandy. "Tonight we'll stage one final crime, the largest yet, and ensure there's irrefutable evidence pointing to that horse. By tomorrow, I want that animal condemned and Eldon Mercer ruined." What Orion didn't know was that his study was no longer secure. Verity had placed a small recording device behind a book on his shelf before leaving for the newspaper office. As evening approached, multiple parties prepared for decisive action. Indigo Marsh was piecing together an explosive front-page story. Eldon Mercer and the Holloways were gathering testimonials from townspeople about Thunderbolt's gentle nature and Eldon's impeccable character. Sheriff Pike sat in his office, staring at 2 documents, Orion's demand letter and his own resignation letter, unsure which one to act upon. And in the gathering darkness, Rowan Walsh led 2 hired men toward the town bank, carrying a saddle, bridle, and horsehair clippings taken from Thunderbolt during his confinement. Tonight would be the culmination of Orion's scheme, the most audacious crime yet, with evidence so compelling that not even Thunderbolt's most ardent defenders could ignore it. The moon hung like a watchful eye over Hawthorne Valley as Rowan, Walsh, and his accomplices approached the town bank. Their plan was simple yet devious. Break in, steal a modest amount, leave overwhelming evidence of Thunderbolt's involvement, then plant some of the stolen money in Eldon's barn. The case would be closed by morning, with irrefutable proof of the horse's guilt. What they didn't expect was to find Sheriff Pike waiting in the shadows of the bank's entrance. "That's far enough, Walsh," the sheriff said, stepping into the moonlight, his badge gleaming. "I won't be part of this charade any longer." Simultaneously across town, Magistrate Frost was conducting an unexpected night visit to the county stables, accompanied by Eldon Mercer and the town's veterinarian, Dr. Larkspur Reed. The veterinarian had made a crucial observation. Thunderbolt's right hind leg showed signs of an old injury that would have created distinctive irregularities in his gait and horseshoe pattern. irregularities completely absent from the crime scene prints. These prints were made by a mechanical device, not a living horse, Dr. Reed concluded, showing comparison photographs. No horse, especially one with Thunderbolt's unique gait, could leave such mechanically perfect impressions. The magistrate's expression darkened. This suggests deliberate fabrication of evidence. But who would go to such lengths? At that precise moment, the Hawthorne Herald's printing press rumbled to life. Indigo Marsh and her team worked feverishly to produce a special morning edition featuring a detailed exposé. Millionaire's scheme, charity fraud, and the framing of Thunderbolt. The story included documents provided by Verity Quinn showing financial transactions, communications regarding the fabrication of evidence, and the calculated plan to destroy Eldon's reputation. Dawn broke over Hawthorne Valley with the town in unprecedented commotion. Newspaper boys shouted the explosive headlines as residents emerged from their homes, shock and anger spreading like wildfire. Outside the bank, Sheriff Pike had Rowan Walsh and his accomplices in custody. The tools of their deception, including the mechanical horseshoe printing device, confiscated as evidence. When deputies arrived at Orion Blackwell's mansion to serve a warrant, they found him attempting to burn financial records in his marble fireplace. His face contorted with rage when he saw Sheriff Pike leading the officers rather than following orders. "You're making a catastrophic error, Pike," Orion spat, his composure crumbling. "I made you. Without me, you're nothing in this town." The sheriff removed his badge and placed it on Orion's ornate desk. "Then I guess I'm nothing, but at least I'll sleep tonight." By midday, the town square was more crowded than it had been for any harvest festival or holiday celebration. Magistrate Frost addressed the gathered citizens from the same platform where, days earlier, Thunderbolt had been accused. "Justice requires transparency," she announced. "Evidence suggests that Mr. Blackwell orchestrated an elaborate scheme to divert attention from his own financial crimes by creating a sensational case against Mr. Mercer's horse. All charges against Thunderbolt are hereby dismissed." The crowd erupted in cheers as Eldon led Thunderbolt into the square, the stallion's coat gleaming in the sunlight. Children ran forward to offer apples and carrots, while adults approached Eldon with handshakes and apologies. Orion, flanked by deputies, watched from the periphery, his empire crumbling around him. The charities he had defrauded were already filing lawsuits. His business associates were distancing themselves, and the townspeople he had looked down upon for years now regarded him with undisguised contempt. As he was led away toward the county jail, Orion noticed Verity Quinn standing with Indigo Marsh. The realization that his trusted assistant had been his undoing added final insult to his humiliation. "You'll regret this," he shouted. "All of you. I still have money, connections. This isn't over." But looking at the united community before him, farmers and merchants, children and elders, all gathered around a vindicated man and his faithful horse, even Orion knew his threats rang hollow. In Hawthorne Valley, justice had prevailed over power and wealth, and no amount of money could rewrite that truth. The trial of Orion Blackwell became the most significant legal proceeding in Hawthorne Valley's century-long history. The courthouse, normally sleepy and underutilized, overflowed daily with spectators eager to witness the millionaire's downfall. Magistrate Frost, recognizing the case's complexity, brought in Judge Marlowe Thorne from the state capitol to ensure proceedings were conducted with impeccable fairness. Evidence mounted inexorably against Orion. Financial experts traced his embezzlement through labyrinthine accounts. Rowan Walsh, facing substantial prison time himself, testified against his former employer in exchange for leniency. Most damning was Verity Quinn's testimony, delivered with quiet dignity despite Orion's glares from the defendant's table. Mr. Blackwell specifically chose Mr. Mercer and Thunderbolt because he believed no one would believe a horse could defend itself, Verity explained to the hushed courtroom. He said it would be poetic to watch a respected poor man fall while protecting a wealthy man's crimes. Throughout the proceedings, Eldon Mercer attended quietly, often accompanied by Thunderbolt, who waited patiently outside the courthouse. The farmer harbored no vindictiveness, only sadness that someone would go to such lengths for money and power. When the verdict finally came, guilty on all 47 counts, Orion's composure shattered completely. As Judge Thorne pronounced a 30-year sentence and ordered full financial restitution to all victims, Orion lunged across the courtroom toward Eldon. "You think you've won?" he screamed as deputies restrained him. "You're still nothing but a dirt farmer with a worthless horse." Eldon rose slowly from his seat, meeting Orion's wild eyes with calm dignity. "I may be a farmer with dirt under my nails, Mr. Blackwell, but I've never needed to steal or lie to sleep sound at night. That makes me richer than you'll ever be." The aftermath transformed Hawthorne Valley. With Orion's assets seized and liquidated, the stolen charity funds were restored with interest. Excess funds established the Thunderbolt Foundation, dedicated to supporting small farmers facing hardship. Sheriff Pike, having resigned during the investigation, was asked by the town council to resume his position, this time answering to the community rather than to wealth. Verity Quinn, initially worried about finding employment after the scandal, received multiple job offers but accepted a position as Magistrate Frost's clerk, her integrity recognized as an invaluable asset to the justice system. One warm spring morning, nearly a year after the scheme had unraveled, Eldon received visitors at his modest farmhouse. Indigo Marsh arrived with photographer Cypress Thornfield to interview him for a follow-up story about Hawthorne Valley's recovery from the scandal. "Some folks are calling Thunderbolt a hero," Indigo remarked, watching the stallion graze peacefully in the meadow. "How does that sit with you?" Eldon chuckled, wrinkles deepening around his eyes. "Thunderbolt's just being himself, honest and steadfast. If that makes him a hero, then maybe we should all aspire to be more like horses." As if understanding, Thunderbolt lifted his head and trotted toward them, nuzzling Eldon's shoulder affectionately. Later that afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived. Former Sheriff Pike, now working to rebuild trust with the community he had failed during his years under Orion's influence. "I've come to apologize properly," Pike said, hat in hand. "I almost let an innocent man and his horse suffer to protect a criminal." Eldon considered him thoughtfully, then offered his weathered hand. "We all make mistakes, Desmond. It's what we do afterward that defines us." As word spread about Eldon's forgiveness, others who had doubted Thunderbolt or supported Orion came to make amends. The farmer welcomed each one graciously, rebuilding community bonds stronger than before. Meanwhile, in the state penitentiary, Orion Blackwell occupied a standard cell, stripped of luxury and privilege. His appeals denied, his former friends vanished. He had nothing but time to consider how thoroughly his scheme had backfired. Back in Hawthorne Valley, the annual Harvest Festival featured a new event, the Thunderbolt Trust Relay, where teams competed in tests of cooperation and integrity, rather than speed or strength. Thunderbolt himself, decorated with flowers and ribbons, led the opening parade with Eldon walking proudly beside him. As sunset painted the valley gold, Magistrate Frost found Eldon at the festival's edge, watching children pet Thunderbolt with delighted giggles. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "sometimes justice takes strange paths." Eldon nodded, his face serene. "Indeed it does, Magistrate. But the truth has a way of finding the light, just as surely as these seasons turn. And that's something no amount of money can ever change." In that moment, watching man and horse surrounded by a community healed and strengthened by adversity, everyone present understood the most valuable lesson of Orion's downfall. True wealth was never about money. At all.